Hey guys, if you're like me, before you start a project, you'd like to do a little internet recon. Today I'm going to be installing the lightweight aluminum Adventure Series bumper for a Jeep Wrangler Rubicon, or just any Jeep Wrangler for that matter, from Next Venture out of Colorado. It's a great bumper. I'm really happy with it. However, I ran into several little snags along the way, and it might be helpful for you to watch this. I'll try to give as many tips as I can through the install and show you some things that I ran into that you can avoid or kind of prepare for. All right, I'm starting to get excited about this project. I've got a few things that have arrived for it. First of all, I've got the SmittyBilt X20 12K Gen 3 winch. I've got the Factor 55 1.5 inch thick Hawse fairlead, the ultra hook from Factor 55 as well, and the rope guard for that. I was wanting to weigh some of this stuff, and let's see how much it weighs. We'll start off with the ultra hook. All right, the ultra hook is showing 2 pounds and 0.3 ounces. I think that's what I saw it advertised for online as well. And then if I throw on the rope guard with its hardware as well, it brings it up to almost 2 pounds 6 ounces, or 2 pounds 5.5 ounces, we'll call it, or 5.6 to be exact. All right, let's see what this Hawse fairlead weighs. Looks like it weighs, what is that? 3 pounds, almost 3 pounds 11 ounces. So I was just curious on that. It's aluminum. And now for the winch. This is not going to be super accurate, but my bathroom scale has it at 71.3. I saw 76 online, and at one point I actually did see 76 on the scale, but I don't know if I did something wrong. I've not been able to reproduce that. I've weighted about 5 times and getting that 71.3. Here are the fairleads side by side. Of course, here's the SmittyBilt on the left, and this is the Factor 55 Hawse fairlead on the right. I just wanted to kind of show you the difference. You can see there's quite a sizable difference. They're basically the Factor 55 is twice as thick. I just measured this one, and the SmittyBilt was 3/4 of an inch thick. And I know I've got that kind of an angle, but I did look at it properly. Dry eyeball, it was 3/4 of an inch, and then this one is 1.5 inches, so it's roughly twice as thick. And of course, what that's supposed to do for you is to make that angle of the rope or the line be a little bit less on the thick one. This one also has the hard anodized coating. It's supposed to be a mil-spec coating. It's supposed to be corrosion resistant to make it a little bit harder if you get gravel or dust or sand in that, to keep that from getting scratched, where supposedly that one could just get scratched a little bit easier. I don't know how big of a deal it is, but I thought the angle might actually be important. Supposedly, if you're going really far up or down or to the right or left, this gentler curve is supposed to be a little easier on the winch pull. So who knows, but that's what I'm going to go with. As I'm sitting here editing this video, I keep realizing there's a bunch of things I forgot to show, and I didn't show any of the uninstall of the plastic Rubicon bumper. That took me an hour or two to get that thing off. There was a ton of those plastic pop rivets that I had to pull out, and of course I got faster as I went on, but at first I was pretty slow on those. There's a ton of good videos on that on the internet, so I'm sure you can find a different one. I've certainly found one and watched it. Then I also had to take that wiring harness out for the fog lights, and that took some additional time as well, so I didn't show that either. But again, there's plenty of videos out there for that. All right, today is the day that I got the bumper. It's about 12 weeks from when I ordered it. It came packaged really nicely. It came in those 2 big boxes. That came in this kind of, that box. It all came packed in this foam. They did a good job of putting that plastic liner around it, so it was really easy to get out and didn't make a giant mess. Like I've had some of them make a big mess. Of course, the long box had this other stuff. Forgot to measure the front of the Jeep before I put the, or took the bumper off rather, so let's do that real quick. All right, so you can see my rudimentary 20-pound weights here. The plastic bumper is about 37 pounds. I've got 40 pounds worth of weight on here. Looks like we're running right at 35 inches before we put this bumper on and everything. So we'll measure it after to see if how much height we lost. You know, it's probably a good idea to wash the front end of this before I get involved anymore. So I think I'm gonna run to the car wash and take a quick break and clean this up. It's pretty nasty if I'm doing a lot of wheeling. Well, I got back from the car wash. Things look quite a bit better. The next thing I like to do is I like to get out the instructions, which by the way, I had to print those out. Those were not included. There's a nice PDF online. I like to verify that I have all the parts, and it looks like we do have all the parts. One thing to note, they use some pretty nice grade 8 bolts here. So they use the heavy duty stuff indicated by those extra tick marks on there. I think there's, what is there, 6 indicating grade 8 bolts, which is the toughest that I know about, for at least for general use. And then I grabbed some dielectric grease that I'll use to reconnect the factory fog lights. There was not any present when I removed them. This little plug was a bear, actually. And I think it had a bunch of dirt in there, and it was really hard to get loose. I was able to get it loose by pressing on this and wiggling it and wiggling it and wiggling it. It's really hard to get loose though. So I'm gonna put some dielectric grease in there if I ever have to unplug that again. Should make it a little easier. Hopefully it would displace dirt and stuff as well. So looks like the next step is going to be to install the winch tray. So we'll get started on that. All right, got that set in there. It was a very tight fit. Right in here, I almost thought I was gonna have to use a hammer, just kind of tap it in. It just sits in here. The holes don't line up exactly, so you basically raise it up and then pin it, just for probably temporary, with a carriage bolt that they provide on each side. That should line up the rest of the holes there. So that part was pretty easy. It was a very tight fit. I thought I was gonna have to hit it in with a hammer. So it's very tight tolerances, so don't be alarmed. You have to have it lined up perfectly to slide in there. I doubt this is going to show up very well on film, but right up in this corner, there is a weld that holds whatever this tab is, this tab up here, and it's keeping this from going up high enough for me to be able to line these two holes. So I'm gonna have to get a grinder out and take some of that weld out so I can push this up. So you might check that as well. I'll see if I can't use an angle grinder real quick to knock some of that weld out just a bit. All right, there's after about 5 minutes worth of grinding. That metal is actually quite hard, which I guess is a good thing. I would expect the weld to be harder than metal, and it was. So I've got it pretty smooth. I think that'll be enough. I'll do a test fit. If that fits, I'll come back in and hit it with some paint real quick just to prevent some corrosion. I'm not super worried about it. I wouldn't even be worried about just leaving it as is, but just because I typically do, I'll probably hit it with a little bit of paint. All right, taking off a little bit of that extra weld that I showed you guys down here really did the trick, and it's allowing me to get both of these inside bolts started, which is good. And then I've got these snugged down pretty good on the outside. And at this time, it's a good idea to go ahead and make sure that you can pass a bolt through these loose. There's 3 on each side that you're going to need to do that with. And the reason is these bolts are going to get mounted in the bumper that I've got over there, and they're going to have to slide through kind of all at once. And I've got one here that I'm having a little trouble with. That's tighter than it should be. So I'm taking like a deburring kit, die grinding kit, whatever this is, rotary burr set. But anyway, I'm just making that hole a little bit bigger because you want that to pass easily through there to make the outer shell of the bumper easy to install. 3 minutes worth of work with the die grinder, and now this one goes, or burr grinder, whatever it is, goes just like it should. That'll make that install a lot easier. All right, for this step, we're going to use these smaller bolts. These are the 3/8 inch bolts, and put them through right here to secure the winch tray. Don't use the big bolts like I did. I made a mistake, put those through there. They don't want to fit. After reading the instructions more clearly, it states to use the smaller of these, so I'm going to do that right now. A quick shout out to my favorite tool for the price, dental picks. You can get a set of those at Harbor Freight for about $3 or $4 for a set of 2 or 3. I used these two guys to pull out some of these plugs that were in the bumper. And there was, I think there was probably 30 of those rascals. I'm not sure if there's that many. There was a bunch. And you end up having to grab them, pull out the outside, and then it lets that flare collapse so it can actually get out of there. Now I'm ended up using them to actually spin these little retaining clips around right here. You can grab this and spin this. This is about the best way I can get those on there. Most of these, sometimes you can just push these on. These are tough little rascals. This is for the fog light where it's gonna go, and these little retaining washers hold those in, but I can't figure out a good way to spin them. There's probably a much easier way. I haven't figured it out. Dental picks to the rescue again. This isn't gonna pick up on film, but the right side back tab right here on this winch tray was about a 1/4 inch taller than the left side, and so that was bugging me. So currently I've only got 4 bolts installed, so I went ahead and loosened those. That's 1, 2, and then 3 and 4 right in here. I went ahead and loosened those, and I got up and it stood on this part right here, and I was able to get it to come down about 1/8 of an inch. I'm gonna put a jack underneath this side. I got this floor jack here. I'm gonna put something and jack up on this a little bit and see if I can get that other 1/8 of an inch to come out of there. I'd like it to be all the way level. That's probably being really picky, but all of that to say this: if you're doing this at this stage, when you get those 4 bolts in, double check your levelness, because I about went further, and I certainly don't want to go any further before fixing that as good as I can. Unfortunately, I did not measure before to see if the Jeep was perfectly level. You know, it could be the frame of the Jeep for all I know. All right, by doing that, I was able to get that within about 1/8 of an inch in alignment. It's not perfect still, but it's pretty doggone close enough for me. All right, here's another heads up. It doesn't look like anything's gonna be easy on this install. These holes are not big enough for these little bolts that they gave us to go through, so I'm gonna have to drill out these holes because you just can't push it on there. It's just not gonna, there's no way to spin it. They're carriage bolts, so the way they're mounted, I'm gonna have to drill those out. Not that big a deal, just giving you a heads up. I'm probably gonna have to trim one of these tabs a bit too. It runs into the outside of the bumper, so I'm gonna guess I'm gonna have to just trim that off a bit. So there's gonna be a little modification involved to get these factory fog lights to work. These are the LED factory Rubicon lights for 2021. That did the trick. The old angle grinder went through that plastic like a hot knife through butter, and that angle is about perfect. So probably have to do it on both sides now. It fits fine into the bumper. So just FYI, that is a mod that I had to make for the factory LED Rubicons for 2021 from the plastic bumper. 3/16 drill bit was the right drill bit to enlarge those holes, by the way. Another thing I would advise you to check out is once you bring on this outer case of the bumper and you get back under here to mount your winch bolts, I don't have enough room for this cutout. See how this cutout is? I'm not gonna have enough room to tighten this bolt. So now I'm in the conundrum of, do I try to grind this out with it on, or do I pull the bumper back off and grind it out, which would just be take me a few minutes to do with an angle grinder if I had the bumper shell off. The issue is that there were 3 bolts, 1, 2, and 3 on each side that had to get perfectly kind of aligned to slide the sleeve on. And so I don't want to do that again. It was kind of hard to do the first time. So pick your poison, I guess. But if it were me and I knew this, I would go ahead and grind this out ahead of time. It would have only taken 5 minutes, but now it's going to take a lot longer. FYI. A couple things to note on the skid plate install. I'm pretty sure this is how the bottom brackets are going to go. Took me just a minute to figure that out, not too long, but anyway, that's this bottom brackets. Also, if you want the silver lining for the back of the Eagle cutout, don't do like I did and mount it on the wrong side. I think these holes right here taper in, which would have made sense. So I'll take that off and remount that. The other thing is, I'm not sure under here, it looks like I'm gonna have to bring these bolts back out again. So this is, I didn't show this, but this is where I had to grind out for the head of the winch bolts. And I'm not sure if this skid plate is actually gonna go in between these two layers, this edge right here, or if it's gonna sit on top of it. So I guess we'll find that out here in a minute. Sorry for the bad camera angles, but well, we've definitely got a problem. This gap right in here is not big enough for the skid plate to fit in between. So that's very frustrating. I've tightened everything down on the bumper already, and the gap is just not enough. It's probably like a 1/16 of an inch or so, and of course with metal, that's not gonna work. So I've got to call into Next Venture. We'll see if they return it, if they've got any solutions. I am not very optimistic that this is going to work, other than loosening everything, maybe completely uninstalling everything, which at this point, you know, I'm super slow, but I'm probably like 10 or 12 hours into this deal, which is crazy, I know. And this is where I had to grind out, like I showed earlier. That didn't take that long, but I thought about it for a long time before I did it. It was aluminum, so it wasn't actually too bad to grind out, but you know, shouldn't have had to do that. All right, we'll see what they say. All right, I'm trying to install the skid plate, which is supposed to go between this little space right here. It's not near thick enough, so I'm having to use a crowbar to pry. I've loosened all the bolts. First of all, I already had this thing all the way together. I already had to take my winch back out, and that was a pain. But the skid plate said to install here at the end, so that's what I'm doing. I don't really like I'm having to scratch up this. I am able to use a crowbar, and I am opening up a little bit of space. Look, I've got this little plate from my winch. There's a spacer that came with it. And it's about the same width as the skid plate, so it kind of lets me know I can use this kind of as a template to see if it's gonna fit in there or not. And it does fit in here, but it won't fit in, whoops, out here at the end where I've got the crowbar. So I'm kind of working my way down. I think I've made some progress. Hopefully this will work. Here's the finished product. I think it turned out pretty well. Pretty pleased with it overall. It ended up being kind of a little bit tricky to put on, but the overall product is very good all in all, and I'm quite pleased with it. So I just wanted to give you a little look at the finished product. Another quick plug for those dental picks. I was able to use dental picks to get down in this hole instead of buying snap ring pliers. I don't know if you can see in there or not, but right in there you could use snap ring pliers, which I didn't have any, didn't want to go buy any. So the dental picks worked nicely to pop that out so I could install the ultra hook, which I really like. I haven't really used it yet. I just spooled out the synthetic line, which you're supposed to do, and then I reeled it back up under tension. But love it so far. Here's something I ran into on this Factor 55 thicker Hawse fairlead. I couldn't get a standard 19mm socket in. This is a Craftsman, and I'm using a metric bolt. I think it is 19mm, and it's too narrow. I actually did contact Factor 55 and told them about this, but the solution that I came up with was I had this old Stihl spark plug wrench laying around, and it just happened to fit. I don't know if it'll pick up on camera, but I actually had to grind the ends of that down a bit, and I went all around it with my bench grinder, and now I can actually get that in there on that. So anyway, that's just a little snag I ran into. So this is a Stihl spark plug wrench. I'm sure you can get one from any Stihl dealer. They're probably a few bucks, but you might already have one laying around like I did. Post install, we're about at 34.5 on the height, at least on the left side. I'll check the right too, but we lost a little bit of height there. All right, we're very similar on the other side. Looks like we're a little over 34.5. So this was the same side that I had issues with here, being a little taller. So maybe it's just the way the vehicle sits. It very well could be. So we're just at a little over 34.5 there. So we still lost a little bit of height there as well, but not too bad. As I'm sitting here editing this video, I realized I didn't give a good summary or breakdown of the weights. So if you remember, I had the plastic bumper on the Rubicon. It was a 2021, and that weighed 37 pounds for that, plus maybe about another 2 pounds for the plastic skid. And then I had 65 pounds minus that 39, gave me 26 extra for the new bumper and skid. All in all, everything totaled up, I came out with right at an extra 100 pounds of weight, and that wouldn't include everything. That was the new bumper, the skid, the winch, the Factor 55 fairlead, and that ultra hook. So about 100 extra pounds over the plastic bumper that comes on standard on the Rubicon. Thanks so much for joining me today. I appreciate it. Guys, do me a huge favor. Please like and subscribe. That'll really help this video do better and help the channel to do better. I'll catch you on the next video.